Right. Yeah. So this was early on before a lot of what we've just talked about. Right after my first diagnosis, and really wrestling with it. And again, I'm 48 years old. I have cancer, a cancer that strikes older men. And maybe it's my midlife crisis. I don't know. But I'm driving home from work, and I think it was the Holy Spirit slapped me upside the head and said, "You've got to go to church, to the Adoration Chapel, and just work it out." Just work it out. And that's one of the beautiful things about Christianity, right? I mean, the word Israel means to wrestle with God. And we can do that, right?
Hello and welcome to the Control Podcast on iCode Media. Today I had a great conversation with my good friend, Jeff Crone. We talked about his journey with cancer, the loss of his best friend's son, and his book that he outlines a lot of these things out with is called Offer It Up. Please enjoy our conversation. Jeff's a great friend of mine. He's a pilot friend of mine. We've got a long history together. We talk about some of that history and enjoy our conversation. More importantly, enjoy the book. We're going to have some links in the show notes. As always, be sure to subscribe to the podcast, write a review, share it with your friends, and support those who support us. The most common questions I get include, what ophthalmological codes or evaluation and management codes should I use? What ICD-10 codes do I need to bill with this CPT code? What CPT codes can be billed together and what can't? And my favorite, how do I manage a patient who has diabetes who comes in for a quote-unquote routine eye exam? These questions really highlight the confusion and uncertainty that serves as a daunting hurdle for providers, makes it more challenging for them to care for their patients and provide those patients with the best opportunity for a lifetime of ocular health and clear vision. That's why we built iCode Education for this specific purpose. Our mission is to provide optometrists with resources to help you understand disease states, revenue cycles, and billing and coding so that you can put that on autopilot and truly care for your patients. Check out iCodeEducation.com. That's EYECODE education.com. We've developed a premier billing and coding bundle that includes all of our billing and coding resources in one place. We also have a 10% discount code just for listeners of this podcast. Enter the coupon code EYECODEMEDIA22 at checkout. We'd love to work with you. Check out iCodeEducation.com. Hello, dedicated optometrists. Are you looking for a way to support your patient's vision and overall eye health? Let me introduce you to Vision Edge Pro, a visual performance supplement that stands out in our profession. Vision Edge Pro contains a balanced blend of mesozeaxanthine, lutein, and zeaxanthine in a 10-10-2 ratio. This combination has been scientifically shown to increase macular pigment density, which enhances visual performance, including contrast sensitivity and vision in glare situations. Additionally, Vision Edge Pro provides 300 milligrams of DHA and EPA, fulfilling the daily requirements for omega-3s as recognized by the leading health organizations. This ensures your patients receive the essential nutrients their eyes need for optimal health. Whether it's for everyday screen use, night driving, or enjoying the outdoors, Vision Edge Pro supports your patients in seeing their best. Recommend Vision Edge Pro for your patients today and help them achieve clearer, healthier vision. Contact your local MacuHealth representative for more details. Vision Edge Pro, because your patients deserve the best in eye health. Go to MacuHealth.com and use the coupon code PODCAST2024 at checkout for special discounts.
We are about ready to build ourselves new offices here.
In the same physical location?
Yeah, same physical location. We're gonna add on a new office expansion and renovate our existing offices. We figured it's about time, built in the 50s, renovated in the 80s. So, if you want a spot of the mauve wallpaper we're taking down, I suppose you could have that.
Thanks.
We're pretty excited to get some people out of trailers, get them into some real offices, and have a real nice working space.
Maybe a window.
Right. Yeah, I know you can see the little window I have that looks out over the Burlington Northern Yard, even if I could see out of it. So.
Yeah, that's well, I mean, it's good that you guys are reinvesting and building and expanding. I know you and I on our flights a lot, we've talked about just sort of generally kind of the way that your business has kind of continued to grow. Right. Yeah, for sure. And of course, agriculture is cyclical, and we're in a bit of a
a down cycle now, but people have to eat, and so it's always, long term, a very nice business to be in.
Yeah. So that, we one of the things, Jeff, I can't remember when we were flying that you had originally discussed. Was it to Wisconsin, when we were on our way to Wisconsin, that you were talking about writing the book, or had you already written it by then?
That's a good question, and I think that was the trip because, yeah. Now that I think about it, I think that was the trip, and it was something I had started, but I wasn't convinced I was going to finish. Right. Um,
Why was that? So why wouldn't you think you were going to finish it?
well, I was thinking one of two things was going to happen. I would either write the book, look down at the 12 pages I wrote, and think, okay, we don't have a book here, or I would finish and think, this just isn't worth going through the trouble of publishing, right? And as an engineer, one of the problems I knew I would face is, how do I tell a story, right? This can't be just a data dump. It needs to be a story. And fortunately, I was able to do that pretty well, I think. But it was always in the back of my mind that the story may not flow. And I was worried enough that I actually hired an editor to look at it for me, and she assured me that there was a story there that flowed pretty well. So
did you ask her? Did you do that after you wrote it, or was it just an outline that you were? But when at that time that you, because when you and I talked about it, I know we've talked about it again. These conversations sort of meld in my brain as one continuous conversation. But
right,
I remember, talking to you about it, and so did you hire her after you wrote it, or when you had your outline?
yeah, I wrote most of it, and then hired her just to make sure that she thought I was going in the right direction with things. Luckily, I guess, both in terms of what she cost me and the effort that I may have had to put in to rework things, she did come back and say, there's not a lot here that I would change. She gave me a few suggestions, of course. But yeah, she came back and said that it flowed, it made sense, it really told a story, and so I was pleased to hear that for sure.
So, as we talk about the story, sort of we're going to do a 30, as pilots, we'll do a 30,000-foot view of the story so
Right.
that people still want to buy the book, and they ought to. And we'll talk about that book later. It's called Offer It Up. My good friend Jeff Crone wrote a book that kind of outlines his path and maybe his story that includes the tragic death of one of our great friends, Jeff's best friend's son, one of his sons, and Jeff's struggle with cancer. And so Jeff and I, for those of you who are listening and sort of kind of impromptu in our conversation, have been friends for a number of years. Jeff, I'm sort of going to do a little bit of disclaimer because I don't know what I can't talk about in your mind. I mean, if you say everything is open from a history standpoint and HIPAA, throw HIPAA aside, then we can do that. So
Yes,
I'll let you decide that.
absolutely. Yeah, it's wide open, and that's one thing that comes out in the book as well, is starting off not wanting anyone to know, to now having written a book and trying to go out and speak on it and doing things like this. So yeah, throw HIPAA out the door.
Okay.
Everything's open.
So to that stance, then Jeff has been a patient for a long time, but also a friend for a long time. And Jeff, again, I think the evolution. It's interesting to have an evolution is a doctor-patient relationship that has formed into a true friendship has been a real blessing in my life, and a number of paths crossed, not just because of St. Wenceslas, and not just because of you being a patient of my dad's and then a patient of mine, but also aviation and then so. Why don't you tell the story? I'll let you tell the story of Tim and Gus, and then kind of I'll let you tell that sort of origin story, and then let it flow from there.
Sure. Yeah. So I guess without getting too far into the weeds on it, I was at a work lunch, and I got a text from my wife that she had heard that my best friend's son had an accident. And honestly, at the time, I didn't think a lot of it. because things happen. We all have kids, and it seems like you're always dealing with something. They're resilient. Um, but a couple of texts later, I started realizing how serious it was. Um, so I texted him. He asked me to stop by the house, grab a few things. I did that. Met them up at the hospital, and spent a good bit of the evening with them until family could be there. And you know, I, at the time, it finally became pretty clear that absent a miracle, it wasn't likely to turn out very well. So later that night, I'm driving home, and I don't know if you want to get into some of that yet.
No, let's go wherever you want to go.
Okay.
I mean, my recollection. So to kind of jump in here, again,
Yeah.
as far as our paths are concerned, we're paralleling these same
Okay.
paths because,
Right.
so I was actually down here in the studio when that happened, and I was actually on a educational conference with a bunch of rheumatology fellows.
Okay.
That I was talking about a medication. I was, educating them on the ocular impacts and what we do from an eye care standpoint of how we manage patients on Plaquenil. And so I was doing that, and it's something I do every couple of years for the new fellows that come in. And I come up, it was an hour long, and I come up, just sort of mosey up. I hear nothing. I know nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And I see an ambulance across the way, and because obviously they live across the street from me, and so Jamie's over there. I rush out, and I'm right there in what you're describing, basically before you get that text, and the I'll probably not be able to tell this part of the story without breaking up, but needless to say,
Yeah.
as sort of this thing goes, as you describe, you get a text, and then it's like, okay, maybe there's some hope, and then but you're over there and you're watching and you're helping as much as you possibly can, and they take him away in the ambulance, and I get, there was some, as I'm walking back to my house, there was some notification that his heart was beating, and this wave of positivity and answering of prayers, right? And it just overcomes you, and you fall to your knees. And anyway,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
so those are the kind of emotions that you're going through. You sort of glaze over some of those in the hospital, and you're driving home after that night of the first hospital,
Right.
which I know you went through as well. So anyway, that's kind of our stories are paralleling, and why
Right,
it means so
exactly.
much, right?
Yeah.
So go ahead.
Yeah, I guess I glazed over it a little quickly there, but yeah, I end up at the hospital, just keeping them company, and I tell you, you'll never forget, and maybe it's my turn to break up here a little bit, but you'll never forget the look in the eyes of your friend when you're standing next to his son in the hospital room. That's something you'll never forget. Never forget. Yeah, so we, really just went through the rest of that evening. A lot of prayer. There was a rosary organized up at church. I pulled that up on Facebook and sat next to him in the waiting room, and we prayed that together with everyone up at church, which was great. And another one of those things I'll never forget is when one of his other sons came up to me in the waiting room after the kids had gotten up there, and he grabbed my leg, and I suppose he was about 3 at the time. Grabbed my leg, looked up at me, and asked me when Gus was going to wake up. And I don't remember what I told him. I'm sure it was something benign and appropriate for a 3-year-old, but those are just some moments you'll never forget.
Yeah. Well, and so I think, again, my recollection of the story is, we had a few of those instances, and, unfortunately, Gus isn't with us anymore.
Right. Yeah. 2 days later, Sunday morning at 11:04. Again, things you'll never forget. So,
So you were, again, my memory was, I remember seeing you kind of working in Tim's yard, planting some kind of bush. And when did you decide to offer it up?
Yeah,
And tell me about that.
Yeah, and it was actually before that. So it was actually the night of the accident. It was a Friday night, and again, spent most of the afternoon and evening there. Finally, his parents made it to town. Her parents were out of town and made it to town. The other boys made it up there, and I thought, okay, now it's my time to exit and let this be a family thing. So I went down to the car. Spent more time than I like to admit just sitting there bawling like a baby. Finally was able to start driving home and praying, of course. Obviously first and foremost for a miracle, right? I mean, it wasn't over yet. So praying for a miracle. But then I kept flashing back to those thoughts of the look in his eyes, his other son asking me about when Gus would wake up. And I thought, I got to do something. I don't know what I can do, but I've got to do something. And at that point, I thought, God, I prayed, God, give me a cross. Give me a cross to bear for him, because there's no way he can handle probably losing his son alone. And so I prayed that. I prayed for that cross. And then I thought, I can offer up my cancer. And at this point, it wasn't really that big of a deal. I knew I had it, but it was stable. We were just doing active surveillance. It was probably going to turn into nothing.
Wait. Was it actually an official diagnosis of cancer at that time?
It was. So we were just in the active surveillance mode.
So they just because I know we're kind of fast forwarding a few times, but so
Right.
Then what had happened was you were watching your PSA level, and it was kind of first PSA level, no big deal. Second one jumped.
Right.
And then it was going to be, hey, we're going to watch this.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of all intermingled there a little bit. So it was enough to be concerning, which led to the diagnosis, right? But then from that point on, it was very stable. We hardly saw any change at all for about 9 months. And so we were happy with the active surveillance. We figured, it could be a decade or more before we had to worry about it. But I offered it up, and I don't know how much your listeners know about this.
You should go a little bit more in depth than that, just for those who aren't Catholic and
right.
Or Christian.
Right. So there's a phrase, and I think it frightens a lot of Catholics who have heard it over and over. Offer it up, right? And it really refers to redemptive suffering. We can unite our sufferings to the suffering of Christ on the cross, and use that as a form of prayer. And just join him in his sufferings, offer our sufferings up, and use that as a form of prayer for anyone or anything. And there's a lot of deeper theology on that even I'm still trying to read and learn. But it's very common, I think, in a lot of Christian communities, but especially Catholicism, to just say, offer it up. Every little inconvenience during the day, offer it up. And so that's what I did. And I thought, it's not much, right? It's the cancer's stable, but yeah, there's some worry involved. There's the inconvenience of appointments and blood draws every couple of months. So I'll offer that suffering up. Kind of all wrapped in that realm of God, give me a cross to bear.
Cooper Vision and the AOA have joined forces in a groundbreaking initiative to transform how optometrists treat children with myopia. The Myopia Collective aims to unite our profession and its allies to challenge the status quo and elevate the standard of care for children with myopia. Everyone is invited to become a member of the collective. By joining, you pledge to act in slowing childhood myopia progression. Membership includes regular updates and information about the collective's efforts, access to educational opportunities and resources, and insights from the ambassador optometrists who advocate for community policy and changes supporting the collective's mission. Click the link in the show notes to join the collective today. We've been partnering with Essilor Luxottica 360 for a while now, and it helps us in 3 areas. First, they use social media campaigns to highlight products that we believe in and prescribe to our patients, and they deliver those patients back to our practice. Second, Essilor-Luxottica 360 enhances our patient experience through staff training tools to help us simplify and streamline the way we communicate about our products and services. Lastly, but for my practice most importantly, it helps us make good business decisions related to our optical offerings. We will systematically and objectively analyze what our patients are purchasing and what they like, and removing products that our patients are not really using or not really drawn to. This, along with additional rebates and immediate savings, helps us continue to deliver high-quality products and services to our patients and keeps our practice resilient. Check out Essilor-Luxottica 360 for yourself by visiting EssilorLuxottica360.com. When Vicky found out, how did they so, obviously like your path, you're leaving out some of the path of how dramatically worse things got for you after that happens. So when Vicky, so we're going to get there, but okay. The first thing that comes to mind is when Vicky finds out that you did this. And she's forced with thinking about like, okay, this is serious cancer, serious prostate cancer. And this is it's not going to just be a little bit of a ride. You're 40, how old at the time?
At the time I was 48.
48 years old with stage 4 prostate cancer.
So we didn't even know that.
She's got to be pretty upset. No, I know. But when she finds out, Jeff, she's going to be a little upset. Yeah.
Right, for sure. And of course her mother died very young from colon cancer, so she's very sensitive to cancer diagnoses. And to be honest, she wanted to have surgery right away and not do the active surveillance. The active surveillance really was not something that she was happy about at all. But I assured her that if it started turning worse, we would do something. What we didn't expect was how fast it turned worse. And I think this is just kind of a really neat part of the story here is a week after offering it up, I had just a routine appointment. And it was that appointment where the doctor walked in and told me that the PSA had almost tripled in the last 3 months. After 9 months of being stable, we tripled. And realized that it was getting really aggressive and really bad, and we would have to do surgery. And then there's just something kind of I don't know, kind of neat in an odd sort of way about realizing that I asked for a cross a week ago and offered this up, and now all of a sudden, I think God's hand's in this.
Did you, but you didn't, did you at first take it that way, or were you upset at first?
No, I did not. I was not in a good place with it from the beginning, really.
Well, so how do you, sorry, so keep going, please keep going.
So, the statistics, right? This is something that hits guys in their 60s, 70s, 80s, right? It doesn't hit in your 40s. Right, so I couldn't get this idea of having this old man disease out of my head, and there's kind of some neat things along the way that helped me come to terms with it. But no, I did not take that well at all. On the day I found out that it had really turned aggressive and we would have to do surgery, that day I was just kind of numb about it. I didn't know what to think. But it was later that day that I realized that this may have to be recognized as being part of God's plan here, right? The timing's crazy. The timing's absolutely crazy.
It is. Yeah, so a skeptic, what would you say to a skeptic who says, Jeff, that's just coincidence?
Sure, could be. How do we know? There's no way to know. But to a person with faith, you find some of these, as another friend of mine says, a God incidence, not a coincidence. Can I prove it? No, of course not. There's no way to prove that. But I really believe that's what's happening.
So then you go down the path and the struggle of deciding, okay, it's time for surgery. We're going to be really we're going to hammer treatment as aggressively as we can be, or as we can. How did Tim take all of this?
We have not talked about it that much.
You haven't?
No, we really haven't. What I do know is that he's not particularly comfortable with it.
That's been my impression.
Right? And I would love to understand more about why, but
I don't know. I can't tell you.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know.
Right.
But take step. But think about it this way, Jeff. I mean, I will tell you, like, as I view them and their response to it, it's like, man, grace of God has been with them for sure, right? So,
yes.
So we're coming up on 3 years, right? We're at 2.5 years basically right now.
Yeah.
Over 2.5 years.
Right.
So I'm interested. It doesn't surprise me the way, Tim for the listening audience is again, is who we're talking about. It's a good friend of mine. He's also a pilot as well. And he's a Marine, he's a great guy, but he's also, he's a hardcore man's man, So, I think he'll talk about it someday, don't you?
I think
but
so.
if you were Tim, I think you might say the same thing. Is like, don't do this for me.
Right.
You don't have this cross to bear. So how do we get ourselves away from this idea that, because some, like, people may not want us to do the things that we might do.
Right.
What do you think about that?
Yeah, no, and I think you're spot on, and that's some of what I've heard. I guess from others that they think he's just not comfortable with it because you don't want to see your friend suffer, right? And it goes both ways. I guess I forgot what your question was.
I'm just curious about how I would respond, or how you might respond if roles were reversed.
No, exactly the same. And who wants to see anyone suffer, and especially for you, right? But I would just say that something like this is a gift to give, right? And sometimes you just have to accept those gifts. But no, certainly I understand the discomfort with it. I didn't intend for it to turn into all this when I offered it up, right?
Right. You were saying a prayer,
right,
thinking that I'm going to have some blood tests for the next few years, and maybe in perpetuity every 6 months or 3 months or whatever. Right. I can just do this. It's not that big a deal.
Right. And my joke is when I pray, it's like, God, I meant mild inconvenience here. That
There's a couple pieces in this story, Jeff, that I want to hit on. I don't want to consume the entire story because I think it's worth reading, but there's 2 points that really stick out in my mind as I read the book. First of all, it's a super fast read. It's a great book and a super fast read. It's simple. I'm not a strong reader for pleasure. I usually like to listen, obviously, which is why I like the podcasts.
Right.
But for those of who are listening, it's a very fast read. The 2 stories that stick around in my brain that I'd love for you to tell in your own words is, you're sitting in adoration. That story is great. So take me to that time as you're grappling with this, and you haven't accepted yet. So tell that story for me.
Right. Yeah. So this was early on, before a lot of what we've just talked about. Right after my first diagnosis, and really wrestling with it. And again, I'm 48 years old. I have cancer, a cancer that strikes older men. I don't know, maybe it's my midlife crisis. I don't know. But I'm driving home from work, and I think it was the Holy Spirit slapped me upside the head and said, "You've got to go to church, to the Adoration Chapel, and just work it out. Just work it out." And that's one of the beautiful things about Christianity, right? I mean, the word Israel means to wrestle with God. And we can do that, right? We can get down and dirty with God and just lay our emotions out there. So I go to the chapel intending to wrestle with him. I kneel down on the floor. It's kind of a strange habit I have. I usually don't use the kneeler. I kneel on the floor right in front of the tabernacle. Start clearing my mind, and it's like, what I really need, God, is trust. I need to just trust whatever this plan is that you have for me. So a few minutes of praying that way and trying to listen to his response, asking for trust, and I hear the organ start playing in the church. Normally, I love the organ. Anyone that knows me knows that I love the organ. Not that day. I'm in a terrible mood. I'm trying to pray for trust, and now this noise is coming from the church. But then I recognize the words to the song, and anyone that's been in a Catholic Mass has probably heard this at some point. The words were, "Glory and praise to our God, who alone gives light to our days. Many are the blessings he bears to those who trust in his ways." And so within a matter of minutes, there's the answer, right? I mean, I need those obvious answers. God needs to slap me upside the head with something like that song, right? Praying for trust, and there's his line, there's his answer.
Did you feel like a sense of peace come over? Did it hit you again? Did it slap you up the side of the head again, or did it take some time to realize?
No, it hit right away, and I was practically laughing at it. It's like, oh, okay, this is kind of crazy that on a whim I decide it's time to stop in here, and that he would give such what I thought was such a clear answer to me in such a strange, unique way. So no, I was smiling, almost laughing on my way out of the chapel. Yeah.
Those times for peace, those times where the real presence is there and you feel it,
right?
That it rushes over you and sort of everything just becomes simple.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, it does. It changes your focus, and a bit of the story that I didn't end up putting in the book, and I haven't told many people, but that Sunday I was at Mass. During Mass, they were doing the final tests on Gus to figure out if they were going to declare him. It was 10 o'clock Mass. And of course I'm wrestling again with trust. I had been asked to give kind of an update to everyone before Mass on the status of Gus and help lead a rosary beforehand. The opening song is Glory and Praise. As we're all sitting there wondering how we can trust God through this, that was the opening song. So,
and that was months after you had that experience, and right?
It was, yeah, it really was, yeah, yep. But there it was again, right? Maybe it's a coincidence, but I can't help but think that was another moment where God knew that we all needed to hear that if we just trust Him, we will be blessed. And it was that was 10 o'clock Mass, so we walked out the door, probably close to 11. 11:04 was when Gus was declared. So,
what do you think? So this brings me. Actually, I want you to tell another story. Don't let me forget to ask this next question. But
sure,
it's sort of just the man story, just the story as a man and a man among friends. I love that story. But and the words you use in the book, I don't know if you took them from somebody or modified them from somebody, but I think about them all the time. But what so I've been thinking of recently, or probably over the last 4 months, I've really been doing some studies and reflections on the Holy Spirit. And one of those that Father Dave Pavanka does is he talks about how, I'm going to butcher this, but effectively, we're not the ones that decide how we're going to respond, so to speak. Like the Holy Spirit is the one that gives us that grace to respond a certain way.
Right.
So so you didn't do anything special. I mean, like, does that ever hit you that way? Is like, if we believe that the Holy Spirit is the one that illuminates the path for us and actually opens us up to be accepting. It's like, I didn't do anything for this, like good or bad. I've just been blessed. And so what then do you think of that as far as like why some people are open to taking it the way you took it, or some people would shut down and just sort of close off, like, God, how did you do this to me?
Right.
What are your thoughts about that?
I think it comes down to faith, first of all, right? I mean, that's the base. I don't know how people get through tragedies without faith. I really don't. Whether it was seeing how Tim handled Gus, or me handling the cancer. Without faith, I don't know how you get through that. But within that faith, it's the trust, right? You have to trust that God is going to take care of you, that he knows what's best for you, that his hand is in every moment of your life. And even when you don't understand it, you trust. And that's what I struggled with at first.
How much of that is the idea of, or the faith that there is something beyond what we have here? Like, is it, because if we are thinking that time is, if this is all we have, then it can be very easy to get upset. But if it's infinite, then
the suffering is such a small piece of everything, right? Not to downplay it, it's not easy, right? But it's such a small piece if you believe in eternity, right? And there's a certain blessing in being able to just say, yeah, I'm ready, whether it's today, whether it's 30 years from now. I'm ready.
Yeah. I mean, again, it's just an interesting thought to me of how people can handle these things differently. And I haven't really known too many people who have really gone through that have been my peers, my friends yet. I mean, I'm coming to the age where I'm going to probably see more of our friends, hopefully not, but maybe. So I want to transition a little bit to the kind of the final thing that I want to be respectful of your time, and not give away too much of what's in the book, but just sort of a man's story among his friends. And again, my recollection is, I can't remember how far after this was, but I don't know if you had already started some of your hormone therapy or your chemotherapy, but you guys have you all together. You get, and I wasn't able to be around. I can't remember why. I think I was out of town or traveling, but so the story was essentially and I'll let you tell it, but sort of the idea of how men interact with their friends in ways that women do not. In any way, shape, or form.
Yes, absolutely. So and I don't know if we've mentioned for the listeners that after surgery, then we found out that it had spread, right? So then we're talking chemo, radiation, hormone therapy, all that. So lots of terrible side effects. But after my first chemo treatment, it was coincidentally that the night of my first chemo treatment, I got the invitation to come over to Tim's place with a bunch of the guys, and you can imagine how brutal it is, right? What's the saying that good friends give you crap to your face and talk nice behind your back? And that's just what men do, right? So all sorts of things from can we use your life insurance money for a party? And then I said yes. I think you probably need to let Vicky pay off the pool first, but then yes, you can use some money for an epic party. Will you be there weekend at Bernie's style? Can we drag your body around? Yes, absolutely, you can do that, right? The side effects, most of your listeners are doctors. They know these things. One of the side effects is incontinence, so they started a diaper drive for me. And of course, some of the side effects from the hormone treatments. I think there was even a pool going around for a while betting on my eventual cup size. So
I think about so on Fight Club. I won't go into what they called the guy, but remember
right.
the guy that had gynecomastia on Fight Club.
Right.
So that was Meatloaf, wasn't it? That was Meatloaf.
Yeah, I think it was. Yeah.
Anyway, harsh.
So
harsh.
and that's just a taste of some of the things that they said that night, and it got pretty out of hand. I didn't mind it a bit, right? Because as you say, that's how guys show affection. I would be worried if they weren't doing that. But one of the guys actually came up to me the next day and apologized, and I thought, well, thank you, but no need.
I think you said it well. You said it really well in the book. It's just the idea that, real friends, good friends, if you're as guys, right? I couldn't imagine my wife and her friends like being just ruthless to each other, like in a friendly way. And real guy, good friends, they're going to say the bad things to your face and they're going to talk great about you behind your back.
Right.
And I love that.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. I do too. So, yeah. And I can only hope that the nice things are being said behind my back, but yeah, that was a lot of fun that night.
So Jeff, there's a ton more in this story. Offer It Up. And, for those who are kind of watching, this is the book. I'll put some links in the show notes about where you can find this book. It's absolutely worth the read. There's human stories in it. There's that are definitely worth, and we didn't even cover a small fraction of that story, and I'll leave the rest of it to explore. Jeff, thanks for coming on. Any other parting thoughts, ideas, something I missed that you're really burning to share?
No, I mean, we covered a good bit of it. You held up the book, and one of the things that not a lot of people have noticed is the image is actually my arm during my first chemo treatment. So
I didn't notice that.
It's kind of hard to see.
It's hard to unsee now.
Right, I should have made that a little more prominent, but a bit of humanity in that. No, but really the book is an easy read, like you said. It's quick. The value is in some of the reflection questions that go with it, right? And through the book, I throw these questions in there, and they're what I was really thinking about, praying about, worrying about during that stage of the journey. So that's really, really the value, I think, in the book. And if you come away realizing three things: that God works in our lives, we just need to open our eyes and see it, right? He's there. And to have been given the grace and the opportunity, the privilege of offering up stage 4 cancer for my best friend as he suffers, that's terrible, but at the same time, it's awesome, right? So look for God in your life every day. Everything that happens, He's there. The second thing is that it takes friends and community to get through something like this, right? So develop those relationships before you need them, right? If they're there backing you up, don't try to do that when you need them. Get that developed early so that it's there, that support's there. And finally, redemptive suffering. It's a lost art, right? Catholics talk about it. I don't know that we're very good at doing it anymore, not like we used to be. So, revive a little of that. Every little inconvenience in your life, it doesn't have to be stage 4 cancer, right? But every little inconvenience in your life, the traffic jam, whatever, think of someone that you love and offer it up for them. It's a real prayer. It really works. It really helps. So.
Well, thanks, Jeff Crone.
Yeah.
Appreciate you.
Yeah,
we're gonna go flying soon.
To have a chat with you. Yeah, we need to get back up in the air again. I need to shoot some approaches soon. So
7-4 Quebec's got to get out of maintenance.
Ooh, those long annuals are never good.
Yeah, yeah, for the pocketbook or for the flying skills.
Right.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you, Chris. I really appreciate it. Appreciate the opportunity to talk to you and your listeners, and of course, appreciate the friendship.
Thanks a lot, Jeff.